Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is completely invisible but absolutely foundational to our modern world. We are unpacking the hidden architecture of international trade logistics. Think about this. Every single year, roughly $25 trillion worth of goods moves across international borders. 25 trillion! Look at the device you're watching this on right now, or the clothes you're wearing, or even the coffee sitting on your desk. They didn't just magically appear, right? They had to navigate a vast, highly structured global labyrinth to get to you. We're talking about traversing thousands of miles, crossing multiple oceans, and jumping between entirely different legal universes. So you really have to ask yourself, how do millions of tons of goods actually cross these borders every single day without the whole system just collapsing into total chaos? When you step back and look at the massive scale of global exchange, it honestly seems like a potential logistical nightmare. I mean, you're moving cargo across 15 different time zones, dealing with completely foreign sovereign laws, fending off piracy, battling unpredictable weather, and somehow surviving these incredibly strict customs checkpoints. The mere fact that anything arrives anywhere is astonishing. But spoiler alert, the solution isn't magic. It's an incredibly elegant, highly structured system of rules and protocols that have been meticulously ironed out over centuries of global commerce. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the roadmap for our journey today. First, we'll look at the global trade relay. Second, the exporter's launchpad. Third, the importer's landing zone. And finally, we'll wrap up with the critical paper bridge. Starting off with part 1, the global trade relay. You see, international trade procedures aren't just a bunch of random administrative tasks. They are highly synchronized, mandatory steps for both exports and imports to function at a global scale. It's exactly these structured steps that actively prevent total supply chain chaos. Think of this overarching architecture like a high-stakes relay race. Why a relay race? Well, because an exporter sitting in Shenzhen, China, physically and legally cannot navigate the internal trucking, warehousing, and tax laws of Ohio. They just can't run the entire track themselves. So the system relies completely on two distinct runners operating in perfect harmony: the exporter who starts the race and the importer who finishes it. The baton simply has to be passed. Without a clearly defined path for both of those runners, the whole transaction fails and the goods just sit rotting on a dock somewhere. Let's move to part 2, the exporter's launchpad. Let's see how this builds, because the exporter's macro process actually begins long before a cargo ship is ever loaded, and the friction here is immense. Step 1, they have to legally set up their organizations just to handle international commerce. Step 2, they must officially register with the necessary trade councils, which basically means proving their goods meet incredibly strict international standards. Step 3, they are tasked with negotiating complex cross-border contracts. And this isn't just haggling over a price, it's deciding international commercial terms. They have to figure out the exact geographic coordinate where the risk officially transfers from the seller to the buyer. And step 4, arranging finance. Look, commercial banks don't just lend out millions of dollars to move unproven cargo on a handshake. It requires a massive amount of rigid financial preparation just to reach the starting line of this race. But getting the physical goods ready, that's really only part of the battle. The crucial point here is this: exporters absolutely must actively manage foreign exchange risks. Imagine putting your product on a cargo ship for a 60-day ocean voyage. If you're getting paid in euros and the euro drops just 5% against the US dollar while your ship is out at sea, poof, your entire profit margin for the quarter could just evaporate into thin air. So before they can even think about passing that baton to the buyer, exporters have to navigate this massive friction of fluctuating global currencies. They do this through some pretty sophisticated financial tools, things like currency hedging and forward contracts, to lock in those exchange rates ahead of time. If they don't manage this financial risk precisely, the entire transaction is basically worthless. Now for part 3, the importer's landing zone. So our second runner in the relay race is getting into position, preparing the groundwork to actually receive these physical goods. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact mirror image of the exporter's journey. The importer has to create a safe landing zone by working through their own complex sequence. They start with step 1, securing the required import licensing. Step 2 is strict supplier selection, making sure the incoming cargo actually meets domestic quality standards. Step 3 involves locking in payment arrangements that perfectly match the exporter's financial requirements. But Step 4? Step 4 is the ultimate final boss: customs clearance. Customs isn't just a simple toll booth you drive through. It's a rigorous process of proving the product isn't counterfeit, hazardous, or misclassified under the global harmonized system. Here's a crazy but very real fact for you. Misclassifying something as simple as the specific type of metal on a jacket zipper can literally hold up millions of dollars of clothing at a port for weeks. Finally, step 5 is securing the domestic warehousing to actually store the product once it survives customs.
Let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture tension between these two runners. On one side, the exporter carries the heavy burden of outbound risks, specifically managing that foreign exchange risk and launching the product into the void. On the other side, the importer carries the inbound hurdles, navigating that dense regulatory maze of customs clearance and securing the physical warehousing logistics. Contrasting these directly really emphasizes the beautifully balanced architecture of international trade. It's a fragile, yet highly effective equilibrium. One side absorbs the vast financial friction of the launch, while the other side absorbs the intense regulatory and logistical friction of the landing.
And that brings us to part 4, the critical paper bridge. This is the absolute climax of the transaction, the actual, literal baton pass that legally, financially, and physically connects our exporter to our importer. Notice the sheer volume of dense documentation required to make that connection happen. The paperwork is generally split into 2 vital categories. First, exporter compliance documents, your standard invoices, packing lists, letters of credit, and inspection certificates. You can think of these as the documents that keep you out of jail. They satisfy the governments, the customs officials, and the regulators. Second, we have critical transaction documents, commercial invoices, bills of lading, and insurance papers. Think of these as the documents that actually get you paid. They satisfy the businesses and the banks. Now, this isn't just bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy. This documentation is the literal physical architecture holding our globalized world together.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we can take these complex, jargon-heavy terms and realize they serve an incredibly powerful, practical purpose. Let's define the 2 most important ones. A bill of lading isn't just some basic receipt from a shipping company. It is a document of title. It literally is the cargo. Whoever legally holds that specific piece of paper physically owns the shipping containers on that vessel. No paper, no cargo. Then there's the letter of credit. Look, when buyers and sellers are thousands of miles apart, trust is pretty much zero. A letter of credit is a rock-solid guarantee from the buyer's bank that they will step in and pay the exporter even if the buyer completely defaults. It completely removes the risk of doing business with a total stranger. Together, these documents form a secure, legal bridge that guarantees trust across the entire world. We so often think of global trade in terms of these massive, 400-meter-long steel ships carrying 20,000 containers across violent oceans. But you know what the great paradox of international trade is? That entire mechanical leviathan rests entirely on fragile pieces of paper, or, their modern digital equivalents. If a single document has a typo, that massive ship effectively grinds to a halt. The ultimate goal of all these rigidly structured steps, the meticulous risk management, and the absolute mountains of compliance, is captured perfectly right here. Documentation is critical for smooth transactions. This paper bridge is exactly what transforms wild international risk into day-to-day reliability. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. How does this invisible architecture of trade procedures impact the products you rely on every single day? Look at the objects around you right now, your phone, your monitor, your shoes. Every single one of them was willed into your room by a precise, high-stakes relay race. An exporter absorbed the financial launch, an importer fought through the regulatory landing, and an invisible paper bridge connected them across the world, just so you could have those items today. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Keep questioning how the world around you is built, and I'll see you in the next explainer.